There's a huge racial disparity in the net worth of Americans. In 2016, the median net worth of black households was about $17,000. For white households, that figure was $171,000, about 10 times as much. One of the drivers of that wealth gap is redlining, the practice of mortgage lenders denying loans to people based on their race or where they live, with those areas marked with red lines on maps. Although the practice was outlawed in 1968, its effects are still being felt today, something entrepreneurs and activists are trying to reverse. What was Auburn Avenue?
Well, it was everything. It was black excellence. It was black commerce.
In its heyday a century ago, Kimberly Alexander's family business was a fixture here.
There was a period of time after desegregation where businesses shuttered and left because they had opportunity elsewhere. And some people thought the grass was greener on the other side. And so, unfortunately, that left a lot of buildings blighted and the area blighted.
And redlined. The federal government began the practice of redlining in the 1930s, outlining in red ink on maps areas deemed hazardous, often home to sizable black, minority, and immigrant populations. Based on that, mortgage lenders would deny loans to low-income minorities in those neighborhoods, causing disinvestment and placing home ownership out of reach for people of color.
I think you see it in every city in America. I mean, this is where the basis of segregated neighborhoods remains to this day.
Councilman Amir Faroqi represents this district, half of which is enjoying the bloom of reinvestment, the other still blighted.
I mean, you can draw a line kind of northwest to southeast, and most of the neighborhoods above that line are predominantly white, and those beneath it are predominantly black. And so you still are living with the generational divide and the wealth gap that happens because of that.
The 1968 Fair Housing Act outlawed redlining nationwide, and city leaders here have pushed projects like Invest Atlanta to revitalize distressed areas. But many neighborhoods once deemed hazardous are still more than likely than others to consist of lower-income minority residents.
We've had my childhood home for probably over 7 decades. And I simply said, I'm going to try to make a difference here.
Chicago native and real estate developer Lamel McMorris is trying to revitalize neighborhoods without completely gentrifying them or pricing out longtime residents. He calls that balance greenlining.
I want to make greenlining about neighborhood reinvestment and neighborhood redevelopment.
In June, his firm, Greenlining Realty USA, partnered with a D.C.-based nonprofit to both build and rehab residential properties in Woodlawn, an area rich in culture. It's the setting for Lorraine Hansberry's play shaped by housing discrimination, A Raisin in the Sun, and the future home of the Obama Presidential Center.
My goal is to be a resource and to be a catalyst and to spur investment. It's almost like dropping a pebble and watching a ripple effect.
He's acquired vacant, abandoned, and tax-delinquent properties and sells them at below market rates. Buyers must be community-based developers who then rehab the properties and sell them to prospective homeowners.
If you're really serious about neighborhood transformation, it's not going to get done by simply building new homes on vacant lots and rehabbing blighted properties, right? I've also had to make an investment in my grammar school across the street. I've also had to partner with the YWCA Chicago. I've had to work with various community groups that are working with gangbangers and trying to get kids off the street. So it's a 360-degree transformation. So it's one thing to be interested in the financial gains, but we also have to be involved and engaged and just as concerned around the social gains.
So the development corporation owns this whole block?
Just about, minus one property on the corner.
Back in Atlanta, Shanae Joseph runs the Historic District Development Corporation, a grassroots organization founded by Coretta Scott King to preserve the Martin Luther King Jr. historical corridor nearby.
The houses that you see in this neighborhood were either vacant lots or just dilapidated. And so within 40 years, HDDC alone has built or rehabbed about 121 single-family homes. We've built about 500 units and 40,000 square feet of commercial space.
But that hasn't been without challenges. A majority of affordable housing here is owned by nonprofits and churches, much of it unsubsidized. So HDDC can't easily profit off of its investments.
What you've done in 40 years
bigger development operations been able to do in 2 to 5?
They've been able to do that with quite a bit of resources. It's the resources that aren't exactly afforded to us. We've basically had to create something out of nothing. And to be able to do that almost single-handedly is an accomplishment that we don't take lightly.
Despite the practice being illegal, Black loan applicants are still turned away by banks at a higher rate than white applicants. The widespread use of redlining has allowed generations of white Americans to build wealth through equity in homes and businesses, further widening a wealth gap African Americans have yet to rebound from.
We have a cat cafe on Irwin Street. It is a cafe in which you pay money to pet cats.
And so you're saying you can give money to
Pet cats, yeah.
but you can't give money to...
But I can't seem to get money to revitalize one of the oldest African American streets in America.
Showing that on paper in black and white, Joseph says, is key.
This is a sketch of all of the projects that are planned and in process on Auburn Avenue. You're looking at about $500 million of redevelopment.
So this is a good investment, you're saying?
This is absolutely a good investment.
Why?
Well, this is good because you're working with stakeholders that already own their properties, right? So you're not having to deal with acquisition, but more importantly, what you're doing is you're reinvesting back into your community that's going to continue to prosper time and time again.
It's what Kimberly Alexander's family did, buying the property across the street, which before the pandemic was home to several businesses.
Invest Atlanta has been an integral part of providing capital for businesses, but I still say there needs to be the private sector that gets involved and developers that want to make this city live up to its, creed.
And, we mentioned the pandemic, wreaking havoc on businesses. It also has a health impact, and there's a connection with redlining in that, folks who suffer from asthma and COPD and diabetes and obesity in larger numbers, African Americans, that's because the desperate effects are due to that they don't have access to health and hospitals. They're just not in those neighborhoods. So it's still impacting.
Like dropping a pebble and seeing
Yeah.
seeing
Great
ripple
report,
effects.
Michelle.